Thanks. Thank you, everybody. So, I've got these magnets that I've been dropping into pianos across America. These magnets, these are just little disc-shaped magnets. You can get them on Amazon. And they were a gift from a fellow New York City pianist named Adam Marks, who passed away last year. They arrived in the mail when I got home after my last concert in March 2020, which was on March 9th, 2020. And I got home and they were in the mail. And I had been informed what they were to be used for, how to drop them into the piano, how they would be naturally attracted to piano strings. The entirety of the piano is magnetic. And so they arrived in the mail, and I dropped them into my instrument and improvised on what I heard. And then I went to bed, and the next morning I woke up and I had this sudden urge to play John Adams's China Gates, which is the piece that you just heard, which my improvisation led directly into. And I had forgotten that I'd left the magnets inside the instrument, and what I heard caught my ear and surprised me and excited me. I felt as though I was hearing this incidental layer on top of the Adams, and a layer that illuminated surprising things about how that piece is organized, how Adams uses his patterns or navigates his patterns and structures his piece. And I started playing this whole sequence of music, improvising, dropping magnets into the instrument, listening to the tones that emerge out of that, and continuing to improvise based on that, and finding my way eventually into the Adams. And I improvised at the piano a lot during that lockdown period a couple of years ago. I think because improvisation was a mode of music making that kept me present in my life and in my body and in time, because improvisation demands that you be accountable to the time that you are in. You know, the only way that improvisation works at all is if you are paying close attention to the present. And so I'm now going to play a piece by Johann Sebastian Bach, a piece that also has improvisation baked into it, but in a different way. I'm going to play the Chromatic Fantasy and Fugue by Bach. And this piece is, I think, a window into what Bach's own improvisation at the keyboard may have been like. To me, it feels like a very, very generous gift from Bach as a result. And so, yeah, without further ado, here's the Chromatic Fantasia and Fugue. Thanks. Thank you. So yeah, two different takes on improvisation, separated by an ocean and some centuries. Is it going down? I think it's going down. I have just one bit of music that I'd like to play for all of you, and then hopefully we'll still have a few minutes for conversation, questions, anything. I wanted to play a piece of mine now. And do we have pianists in the audience? I'm just curious. Okay, great, I see hands. So this piece is a piece I composed last year, just about exactly a year ago. And it's my first attempt. This piece is like my first go at exploring some very piano-specific questions. So I wanted to see, I've been interested in like the tension between the piano's 88-key framework and the sort of assigned equal temperament tuning that is wedded to that 88-key framework. And I've been curious about the tensions between that and the naturally occurring harmonic series that is around us all of the time, that gives every sound its unique character. And so I wanted to explore whether or not it was possible to play up and down the harmonic series from the keyboard. I wanted to see if it was possible to play up and down the instrument's timbre in that way, whether it was possible to do so with any level of precision. And maybe most of all, I wanted to see if I could write, as a composer, if I could write a piece in which the guiding melody that I was following while writing it, that the main thread was not to be found necessarily in the pitches I was playing at the keyboard, but rather that this melody might live in the resonance of the instrument, in the harmonics of the instrument. So it might be a line or a voice right at the edge of perceiving and imagining. So yeah, this piece is called Keyed In, and I hope you like it. All right, thanks everybody. That's my piece of the program. Yeah, I guess we've got a few minutes before our period is up, but I was wondering if anybody had any questions about anything at all, or a topic, or something. Yeah, hey.
With that, like, this new piano, how different is it from all the other ones that you've played, being that, like, it's the only one in North America?
Oh, does everyone know how new this instrument is? Yeah, it's very cool to play an instrument that's like 2 weeks old. I don't know, I would describe, I am a Steinway artist, so I mostly perform on Steinways. That's what I have the most experience with. This action, the keyboard, to me feels like it's really quite light, and I honestly feel like I have only the slightest idea of just how loud this instrument is. I got to test the disc-liver function earlier, and I walked out into the hall and I was like the sound just like slapped me in the face. It's so huge. So apologies if it was a little bit loud just now. Yeah, I would describe the action as like fairly light. I often like a little bit more of a feeling of resistance. I think for me, I like sometimes feeling like I have space to continue like carving through, if that makes any sense. I like to feel like I'm like working towards a high ceiling, but it's really easy to play on. It's really nice for passage work. It's cool. And the disc liver function is like magic. Yeah.
How long have you been playing piano?
How long have I been playing piano? I've been playing piano since I was, I started lessons when I was 3, and I started playing some stuff by ear when I was about, like, just before I turned 2. Nursery tunes, yes.
So I see there's a little pedal on the left side of the piano. What is that?
This little thing here, this is a page turner, because I've got an iPad in here. I've been an iPad musician for probably like 8 years now, so I'm kind of like, I'm in too deep. But this is a Bluetooth pedal. If anyone here is an iPad musician, the Bluetooth pedal I like, I should say a tablet musician, the Bluetooth pedal I like is made by Donner, and what I like about this one is that I can actually rest my foot on it without pushing it down, which is not the case for all of them, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Something that's like the new Banshee music. Who are some of your living influences? Who do you aspire to still sound like or mold your sound around?
Cool. My like living, did you say specifically? My living influences. Yeah, I don't know. I am. I remain inspired by, the biggest living inspiration for me, one composer comes to mind, but it's more than just one composer, it's also just like an approach. The composer's name is Catherine Lamb, or Cat Lamb, and she writes really, really intensely beautiful and focused music, and she uses like intonation systems derived from like the harmonic series, and she has developed this very, very specific system. It's really like complex. Like she'll have a harmonic palette that's completely derived from like the harmonic series of 10 hertz, for example. And she writes all this music, which really like is not accessible for me as a pianist from the 88-key keyboard. It's not possible to play that music directly. I've commissioned a piece from her, but it was a piece for synthesizer and cello, where like we could remap the keyboard to be a new set of notes. Her music had a very profound effect on me when I first encountered it, because her music, despite having all of this complexity, is also deeply emotional and just, I would say, very profound. And the effect that one of her pieces had on me was, it showed me, it gave me the feeling that I kind of am addicted to, which is it showed me that there was something outside of my comprehension that I nonetheless felt connected to. She was clearly using a different language, a different vocabulary than what I was familiar with, and yet I could feel her on the other side of the piece. So it did that for me, but it also kind of liberated equal temperament for me, because what I realized in that process was, because I already thought of myself as like having my ears blown open. My sonic frame of reference was widened pretty early on, but her music, being this tonal music that used a totally different tonal framework, helped me realize that I was still listening to equal temperament as a kind of default, and everything else was sort of in relation to that default system. And after encountering her music, I went back to my piano, which also was pretty out of tune by this point, so I think I was primed for this realization. But I went back to my piano and I just started like picking out intervals, like listening to the really, really small details of the beating between the tones, the sort of vibrations that resulted from different intervals. It got me excited again about equal temperament, because I realized by listening to a piece that was doing something completely different, it made me realize that I was not even listening to equal temperament to its fullest potential. I was not listening for the colors that it uniquely had to offer. And so that's someone who comes to mind. One other person I'd love to give a shout out to, just because his work really tickles my brain a lot, is a Canadian Chinese composer named Remy Su, whose work uses video game mechanics. And so I performed a piece of his a few years ago called Foxconn Frequency Number 2. And the piece is Foxconn Frequency Number 2 for one visibly Chinese performer. And it's essentially, it creates a literal gameplay in which I am fed, as the keyboard player, I'm fed a computer-generated sequence of etudes, essentially, that I then have to execute with a certain, and I'm penalized and failed based on wrong notes. So you have to like execute the exercise above a certain threshold of wrong notes and within a certain time frame, or else you have to do it again. And so theoretically, this piece goes on forever if you don't finish the game successfully. And through this piece, he's exploring like very specific like Chinese diasporic ideas, kind of like the figure of the Chinese pianist, the figure of the Chinese factory worker. It's just a really, really rich and complex piece that uses these intense, real mechanics. It's the only time that I've played a piece where the composer told me, don't practice, because the piece really requires you to fail over and over again. So that is another person who comes to mind. Anyway, yeah. Yes.
Thank you for sharing with us when you wrote the piece that you just performed for us, because it felt like lockdown, right? I mean, it felt intense and surreal and unbelievable. And the voice that you described was sort of the voice we're all looking for to help us make sense of it all. I mean, it was intense. And so my question for you is, how do you feel, both physiologically and emotionally, when you complete performing that piece?
It's a great question. How does it feel when I get to the end of the piece? Thank you. That's very kind of you. It feels like relief to me. It feels like a kind of relief to me. I mean, the thing that I was hoping for was that you reach the end of that piece and the single note, you suddenly can just hear the like universe of tonality within that note, and you can sort of, I think what I wrote for myself in the extremely messy score is like surfing up and down the harmonic series, like Morse code surfing up and down the harmonic series. And to me, that feels like it's a kind of freer version of that idea, and it's to me it feels like relief. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I think I'm supposed to let everybody go. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and we have a show. We have a concert on Saturday, so please come. Thanks, everybody.